r/AskReddit. People who understand Chinese Japanese. What's the dumbest thing you've seen tattooed on someone? Dude was so proud of his grandson that he had a tattoo that said "I love my grandson." Except I'm guessing everyone just googled "I love my grandson" because it came out reading "I love fat boys." Whoops. The 4 elements tattoo with dirt, hot, blow, wet was pretty funny. Long ago, the 4 nations lived together in harmony. Then everything changed when the hot nation attacked. I have the characters for shrimp dumpling, Hago, tattooed on me. I knowingly did this because I'm half Chinese and ducking love shrimp dumplings. I had a Chinese girl ask me if I knew what it meant and I laughed and said of course. I love dumplings. My Chinese mother was not impressed but then laughed and said it was very me. I don't know if this was stupid or brilliant but someone had witches respectfully asking if they had soup dumplings. I thought it was really stupid until someone said that they must really like soup dumplings. Once when I was in university, working at a shop, a very fat lady came in with the kanji for large tattooed on her shoulder blade. I politely complimented her tattoo and asked what it meant. She said it meant sassy. Japanese speaker here. Guy had one that reads someone told him that "tun" means pig and "katsu" means to win. He thought that putting them together means to win against pigs. Police? Tonkatsu means pork cutlet. I didn't have the heart to tell him. Not my story but a friend of mine. She could read kanji and was in class one day noticing this girl's tattoo for the first time. Confused, she inquired about it. "What does your tattoo say?" "Hi princess." Turns out it actually said pig princess. Seen a few over the years but one that I remember most was when I first started learning Mandarin. The guy had a tattoo on the back of his leg that proudly said which means beef. It always cracks me up to see people with single characters tattooed on themselves, especially characters for the natural elements. I imagine the same tattoo except it says dirt in plain English, and it makes me laugh. Sort of a reverse semi-related answer to this question. My cousin was in Japan trying to land a business deal with some auto manufacturers, taking them out to dinner and such. And during dinner a girl walked by wearing a shirt that said "I want to bury my head in your chest," misspelling the fault of the shirt, not of me. He laughed like a donkey breathing Joker gas, and had to fumble trying to explain to these old Japanese dudes what was so funny. Eventually, when his Japanese wasn't up to snuff enough to explain either the act or the misspelling, he settled for miming the action with a pair of invisible breasts. The Japanese dudes instantly understood that, and thought it was hilarious. It apparently made the rest of the business negotiations run much more smoothly. I noticed some random white guy with some interesting tattoos. I think it was in an amusement park and then got a little excited to see Korean tattoos, which you rarely ever see. They were written vertically on each of his calves. One said left leg, the other said right leg. Dumb and pretty cool. While stationed in Japan, a friend got a tattoo by some random guy outside of base. He wanted some Shinto quote for a prosperous life but instead got the kanji reading something like "fat fish eat long." The Japanese workers just called him Fat Fish for the next 3 years. It caught on live fire, even random people from other commands knew his nickname. I met a girl when I was backpacking in China who knowingly had the characters for prostitute tattooed on her hip. She thought it was funny, and the only people who saw it would be ones she chose to show it to. The Chinese guy who was drinking with us in the hostel was horrified, and suggested that she get another tattoo underneath which said "only joking." I saw someone with the characters for Big and Father and figured it was like an approximation of Big Daddy. The guy got really agitated with me and told me it was Chinese for eternal wealth. Okay. Took Mandarin in high school. My teacher told us about a woman who had a tattoo of the word, probably thinking it meant free as in free-spirited, but it actually means free as in no cost. Guy had on his arm, said it meant lover of Asian beauty when in fact it means foreign pervert. I speak Mandarin, and it works both ways. Here's one in reverse. On the beach in Taiwan I saw a huge, and I mean huge, ripped Taiwanese guy walking on the beach in Hualien with his girlfriend. On his back in black Gothic letters, flanked by swords, was the phrase, "Slap dude." Told him it was an interesting choice and tattoo. Stored behind it. Turned out he thought he was getting a tattoo that said swordsman. When he found out what it actually said, well, Wouldn't want to be that artist. Colleague of mine wanted his name, Nick, tattooed on his arm in Chinese characters. Spoiler, shit don't work that way. To the credit of the artist, the stuff on his arm is pronounced Nigu. It translates to none. A lot of women have written on them. For some reason they think having the word woman written in Japanese adds some sort of mystical feminine power to it, when in reality people most often associate it with a bathroom door. Imagine seeing Japanese women walking around with woman tattooed on themselves. On top of that, the kanji is often written rather sloppily, like something a 5-year-old would write, rather than elegant script. I knew a guy who thought he had warrior tattooed on his arm, but another friend informed me actually read drunk asshole. He was an asshole, and often drunk, so I chose to believe this. I'm half Japanese. Saw a guy with tattoo going down his arm. He probably wanted boy man, I'm guessing. Translates to rice field power. I, 27F, don't understand Chinese Japanese. Have the characters for strawberry on my shoulder. Was at a gym changing and gal one who could read the language says, "Oh, strawberry, I love your tattoo." I explained why I had gotten the tattoo. Long story involving strawberries, and gal 2 overheard our conversation. Gal 2 says I have a tattoo that means wisdom and shows us. Gal 1 says, that says turtle. Edit. Here is the story behind the tattoo. My grandmother passed away of bone and lung cancer in 2010. I bought frozen strawberries a few weeks later to make smoothies in the morning, and the smell of those frozen strawberries transported me back to my childhood when I would eat frozen strawberries from her freezer. She used to pick so many and make jam etc, but I would pick strawberries to snack on instead of ice cream. After she had passed, I decided to get a tattoo, and was thinking of a strawberry with ice crystals around it or something. I went for American Chinese food with friends and was telling them about my tattoo idea. When it came time to break out cookies and read our fortunes, mine read to remember is to understand, which I thought was cool. Had been remembering and thinking of my grandmother over the last month or so since she had passed. When I turned over the fortune, the Chinese word was strawberry. I've never seen 6 people turn white so quickly. I decided to get the Chinese symbols for strawberry that day, and I still have the fortune in a special box at home. Not the circumstances in THR question, but still similar. My mom used to work as an ophthalmic tech. The doctors gave the techs free rein when it came to scrubs, so my mom and her friends always had really fun scrubs and clogs. One set had some Chinese characters all over them. After work one day, her and her work friends all got dinner, and while they were waiting to be seated, a Chinese family came in and was behind them. The father got a kick out of the scrubs because they were just a random mix of words. My mom said he was pointing them out to her like this one means shoes and so on. Her friends were dying laughing, and while my mom thought it was super funny too, she stopped wearing those scrubs. I don't speak Japanese nor Chinese, but I once had an art academy colleague who had 2 kanjis she had tattooed on each shoulder, and she believed they meant eternal happiness or something, because she saw them in a book at a flea market. I copied the kanjis on a piece of paper and translated them on Google. They roughly translated to foot fungus. The kanjis are these. Saw a pretty tatted up guy one day with some Chinese markings on his forearm. Asked him what they meant and he said just a bunch of random Chinese letters, to which I inquired, which ones? And he corrected me, saying no, it says, just a bunch of random Chinese letters. Thought it was pretty slick. Edit. Obligatory. This is my first ever silver. Thank you, kind stranger. As a side note, after I talked to this dude, I got the idea to get a tattoo in Japanese that says this is not Chinese. I think his was better, but both are funny in their own way. Riley Reid the porn star has inked on her back. It means when life gives you lemon, make lemonade, but it's not a saying in Chinese, so it sounds dumb tbh. There's also grammatical error, so it makes it even funnier, but apparently she did it as a joke. IDK. My mom is from Japan, and she used to point out tattoos to me all the time. I don't speak Japanese myself, so I can't give the exact translations or characters. She told me one of the biggest mistakes people make is when they pair 2 characters together without checking what the characters mean as a group. They assume that the characters maintain their original meanings no matter what's alongside them. There are two examples I remember really clearly. 1. A woman with characters like sexy and woman. What it actually said was horsehouse. 2. A dude with sex and freak on his chest, which actually meant something along the lines of predator or pervert. She'd see the tattoos and just immediately start giggling. Memories, comma. My uncle has egg drop suit tattooed on his wrist in Mandarin. He tells everyone it means something different, strength, destiny, etc. But he got it so that he can go to the Chinese place when he is super hungover. He wears shades and noise cancelling headphones, points to his wrist and is able to stay in his happy place while getting his favorite hangover meal. And yes, he was hungover when he got the tattoo. Not Chinese, Japanese, but I knew a guy who had a Ganesh tattoo and told me very robustly that his was the god of war. I attempted to let him down gently. Japanese. Meet Tuesday. Japanese. Not a tattoo but on a shirt and it literally said Big Rag. The second mistake I see apart from bad translation is that they use computer font for tattoos instead of calligraphic styles. Basically, it's the equivalent of getting an English tattoo in Times New Roman. Even if the character is correct, it looks like reading a bland text document. If you really insist on getting Japanese Chinese tattoos, make sure the artist is also familiar with the language and calligraphic styles along with getting the translation correct. Also, translations do not exactly work one-on-one. A phrase that sounds cool in English might sound extremely silly or childish if directly translated. Researching Japanese Chinese phrases is a better method and avoids the bad translation issue. Finally, it helps understanding some cultural context surrounding tattoos. In Japan, tattoos are almost entirely associated with the Yakuza, so don't be surprised if your tattoos aren't a hit with Japanese people even if you had everything correct. I speak Khmer, Cambodian, and when I lived there I saw tourists with just incorrect translations of words all the time. Like it was clear they used Google Translate and it gave them something similar, but probably not what they actually wanted. Examples: some with, which means love, except it's only love as a verb, not as a noun, or for strength, but really means like, generally not feeling like garbage rather than specifically strong. It doesn't refer to emotional strength or even really physical strength, just like I woke up today, and I feel basically fine. But if you put strength into Google Translate, that's the word it will give you. I lived in Taiwan for a couple years and I saw the opposite all the time. The best example was an old guy I met at a park wearing a shirt that just said pervert. I also met a woman wearing a shirt that said I effing hate being lesbian at least 100 times. She was horrified when I told her what it meant. Not a tattoo, but replay container stitched on a hat in Japanese. Not Chinese or Japanese, but I have the tattoo. I got a tattoo that was supposed to mean phyllis. A friend who majored in Mandarin says it means small cake. I did 3 years of Mandarin Chinese in high school. After I graduated, I met a woman and we kinda became friends. She was excited to get a tattoo and she had printed it out and showed it to me when I told her I knew some Chinese. The character was for joy or happiness and she wanted me to make sure it was correct. She handed me the paper, and I looked at it but it was upside down. I turned the page and told her it was right and she looked confused but satisfied and I didn't think anything of it. A few months later she showed me the tattoo on her ankle, and there it was, upside down. I said it looked great. A friend of mine did a tattoo. He thought it was faith but in reality was soup. Not tattooed on someone, but I once saw a car with written on it. It reads yakisoba, which is a Japanese noodle dish. My friends and I went to Japan. My buddy is a huge fan of the culture but doesn't understand the language, so we went and he has a bunch of tattoos of all the places he has been with the sentence I visited, and so he wanted to get one in Japanese. Note the Japanese can be brutal. He ended up getting don't speak the language, don't visit the country. He's trying to get it covered up. Sister has an apprenticeship at a tattoo parlor. She sent me a pic of a customer's tattoo asking what it said. The customer had said that it meant inner power. The word was pronounced hamburger. In English this means hamburger. My sister chose not to tell her, as it would definitely ruin her day, and I choose to believe she saw some inspirational Facebook post meant to trick people into believing things about a culture they only pretend to care about, and I applaud whoever made it. A work colleague, now long-term friend, had Pompui tattooed on his shoulder. He had been to Thailand and the locals nicknamed him Pompui and said it meant happy fat man. He was fat. He was happy. Lovely man. He did not know how to spell it, or even say it correctly, but 20 years later, he still loves that tattoo. Not Chinese or Japanese, but a lot of people seem to like using Greek letters as substitutes for English. It then makes no sense. For example, Oitians. It was on a shirt but it said trash fire in Japanese, and I now want that shirt. Charcoal grill instead of 7 rings. Not Chinese or Japanese but relatable. Korean. Worked with a guy in Korea as an ESL teacher. He had the words in poorly written handwriting or American person tatted on his butt cheek and showed me one day the only tattoo he had, lol. I really want to get Duck Chow Mein tattooed on me somewhere here, but I don't read Mandarin or Cantonese and I'm too paranoid to trust anyone to tell me what symbols I need. Japanese speaker here. Some guy had one that said dong in Japanese on his neck. I laughed so hard in the train and no one knew why. Learning Japanese, but I saw someone bragging about a tattoo on their wrist in public being deep and meaningful. It was in katakana, which I can read, so I carefully glance at it as I walk by. It was, as in Kiro. That's the sound a frog makes. They just tattooed ribbit onto their wrist. There was a post recently about a tattoo in Thai reading prawn spring roll plastered across a lady's shoulders. Not a tattoo, but my uncle, Chinese, married into the family, got me a bag for Christmas a few years ago with kanji on it. It's a very cool bag. It's LED, but I didn't want to be that fool who walked around with a weed bag and didn't even know what it meant. I asked my uncle. He apparently didn't know. He wasn't even sure if it was Japanese, Chinese, or Korean, which I found interesting considering I knew he spoke Mandarin and he grew up in an ESL household. So I tried to Google it and enlisted my dad in talking to his army friends to figure it out. I finally found out by searching for the bag itself online rather than just the text on it. It turns out the text translates to the worst. It's meant to be a joke to make fun of people who get kanji tattoos without knowing what they mean. Once I found out what my bag said, I loved it even more and confidently wore it out since I could safely explain the joke to people. Found out this past Christmas that my uncle picked it out because he thought it was some anime Naruto thing. Thanks, Uncle Ed. Edit. Change my phrasing to be a little more conscientious that culture isn't genetic, essentially. Translator here. So many good ones. Had a metalhead guy think he had rock and roll in Japanese on his arm. Turns out it was witch's rock slide landslide. The natural disaster. Had a girl with a tramp stamp she thought meant sweet babe, but actually had lit sugar baby. Then there are the ones that are either backwards, incomplete, or nonsensical. The latter usually happens when you try and translate an idiom, PR phrase or glurgy motivational saying and you end up with passionate passion, fear, or something equally meaningless. Not a tattoo, but when I was a child I loved and idolized Mulan to a point where I was probably, unintentionally, racist. I wanted to be Chinese so I could be her, lol. Super cringe. Well, I was in love with this necklace I got out of one of those gumball machines that had a Chinese character. I wore it all the time. Then one day a new girl my age moves to my town from China, and the first time I met her, she looks at my necklace and informs me it just means big. I speak Japanese and I have seen quite a lot of tattoos that don't make sense because they are clearly direct translations from English, or because people don't take cultural context into consideration, like the kanji for woman and man, which do literally mean woman and man. But in Japan the singular kanji strongly connotes a public toilet since this is what is on the doors. Then there's all the inverted miswritten kanji in another direction. I also speak Danish, Swedish and Norwegian, and it has become real popular to use the vowels a ligature o stroke a ring in other countries, I guess, to indicate Scandinavian quality, authenticity, coolness. I don't know, but it never makes any sense. Like the makeup company Kosas. I know it's just a name, but it sounds really stupid. If you're reading this, your eyes are slanted. They were correct. My wife's boyfriend from college got her name tattooed on his arm after they broke up. Turns out the tattoo didn't say Carrie, it said curry. So I guess in a way, it probably worked out better for him. I've seen a guy which had a tattoo. A stupid foreigner. It was LOL. I wonder he'd done it for purpose or not. She had on her shoulder. It means to teach. So I asked her why she got that on her shoulder. Girl. No. It means to believe. Me. No. It means to teach. Girl. Maybe in Japanese. But in Chinese it means to believe. Me. Dot. Bless your heart. Walks away. Well, I didn't say the last part. But I thought it after the fact. On mobile. Didn't come out the way I thought I formatted. Saw a guy with a tattoo on his back which he thought meant something like treasure each day. The literal translation is today is gold. Not the worst one. But to someone who was a native speaker it would be very strange. Watermelon. Bro, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.